Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s with this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, 1987 at online booksellers everywhere. There was a mass shooting that took place near Portland, Maine, where 4 people lost their lives and 3 people were wounded. All news footage used in this video is under fair use of United States copyright law of 1976 and is used in conjunction with my commentary.
Begin tonight here with the man accused of yesterday's deadly shootings in Yarmouth and Bowdoin. The 7 people shot, the latest victims of mass shootings in the United States. Police say Joseph Eaton confessed to killing his parents and 2 of their friends in Bowdoin before firing on drivers 25 miles south on I-295. And tonight we are learning some new details through court documents and an update from Maine State Police. Nora Hogan joins us live here in studio to break down what we've learned today. And Nora, I know you've been digging through some of those records, and what have you seen?
Well, John, we now have a more precise timeline of the chaos that unfolded yesterday and a better sense of the alleged shooter's frame of mind. 34-year-old Joseph Eaton had at least 6 prior criminal convictions on his record.
Police were called to a Bowdoin home on Augusta Road around 9:40 a.m. Tuesday after a family member entered the house and discovered a dead body inside. Officials have now confirmed that the victims are homeowners Robert and Patricia Eager and their family friends Cynthia and David Eaton, the parents of the alleged shooter. Shortly after officers arrived on that scene, police responded to gunshots on I-295 in Yarmouth.
It began to come together at that point. And we're thankful for that because that really limited the possible threat to the public.
In his confession, Eaton said that he shot at cars on 295 because he thought he was being followed by police. After sifting through court records, we now know that Eaton has a criminal history spanning at least 3 states dating back to 2008 with burglary and assault charges in Kansas, Florida, and most recently, Maine. He spent the majority of the past 5 years in multiple jails and was released on April 14th, just days before the shootings. He posted this video on Facebook on Monday.
What good's it do to hate somebody? You know, it destroys you. It's not the way things were supposed to be done. It's not the way we were made. Just need to try to forgive me for the things I did.
Eaton's criminal record would prohibit him from owning a gun. There are still many unanswered questions, with police refusing to say what type of firearm was used, how many guns were used, and how Eaton acquired the weapon or weapons.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we're not going to be able to get that specific with you today, but we'll keep that question in mind for future reference.
Eaton is expected to make his first court appearance in Saginaw District Court at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow. Live in studio, I'm Nora Hogan for Maine's Total Coverage.
Now, according to reports, 34-year-old Joseph Eaton was released from prison on April 14th as related to a 2-year sentence for assault that he had served, and he went back to the home where his parents were staying with some neighbors that they were living with. And as he was staying in this home, he was possibly frustrated and simmering and boiling in anger and seething with frustration about not being able to get a chance as related to his life. And according to reports, he allegedly wound up exploding in a rage where he possibly murdered his parents and the owners of that home that his parents were living in, before driving over to the interstate and participating in shooting at cars on the interstate, which led to the injuries of another family, critically injuring one and injuring 2 others. Now, the police are seeing the alleged behavior of 34 Joseph Eaton as a isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of the alleged behaviors of 34-year-old Joseph Eaton, they fit the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And it's clear to me that Joseph Eaton possibly was a ticking time bomb and this ticking time bomb just was about to explode in rage because he didn't know how to pick up the pieces of his life and start his life fresh. And because he didn't know how to pick up the pieces of his life, because he did not learn any male life skills or male survival skills growing up, what he did was go out and explode in this rage, where he participated in this extreme act of violence by going to murder his parents and then going to murder the owners of the home that they were sharing the home with. And I believe after he exploded in this rage, he basically felt like he had nothing to lose, and because he was desperate for attention, what he did was go out and drive to the interstate, where he began firing this gun that he was not supposed to have at random cars, and this led to 3 members of another family winding up getting injured, and one winding up injured critically. And again, this beta male wound up participating in this violence, and the main reason I believe that he participated in this violence was because he just was so frustrated, because he would now have to take responsibility for himself at 34 years old, and he was supposed to go out here and set a course for his life, but he did not want to take that responsibility. And because he did not want to take that responsibility, he did not want to go out here and stand up like a man. And that was shown in a video that he posted on media outlets, talking about how he was abused and how he needed a second chance. But it's clear to me that this man did not really want a second chance. No, what he wanted to do was just go back to prison, because the only consequences for these actions were that if you go out here and take the lives of individuals, you are going to have to deal with the consequences of those actions. And this is what this beta male was not thinking about, because this beta male was in his feelings, and because he was in his feelings about what happened in his childhood and the abuse that he allegedly suffered, he was so caught up in his feelings of anger and frustration about not being able to make life work that he basically wound up exploding in this rage, where he wound up getting his alleged, I believe, revenge on his parents, and then took the innocent lives of the people who owned that home. And then he also went out and looked to get attention for himself. Again, his behavior definitely fits the pattern and profile of mass shooters. However, the mainstream media did not want to cover this story as the mass shooting it actually was. No, what they wanted to do with the story that I found to be quite interesting is that they called it a shooting in Maine on Interstate 295. They never mentioned it as a mass shooting, even though the pattern of behavior definitely fits the pattern that is defined as a mass shooting, where an individual murders 4 or more people and then looks to participate in violence after it using a firearm. I mean, this individual's behavior clearly fits the pattern and profile for mass shooters. However, the mainstream media did not want to classify it as the mass shooting it actually was. And I believe the reason why they didn't want to classify this as the mass shooting that it actually was is because there are too many white faces being correlated with mass shootings, and because so many white faces are correlated with mass shootings, they don't want to keep adding on to those stories, because what they're afraid of is people connecting the dots as related to mass shootings and associating mass shootings with white and non-black males. And in order to deflect from this, what the mainstream media did with this whole story of this shooting in Maine was go out here and look to call it a shooting. Meanwhile, they called a shooting in Dadeville, Alabama, a mass shooting, even though the shooting in Dadeville, Alabama, did not meet the criteria for a mass shooting, because you had 5 individuals who participated in this shooting at this dance hall. It did not meet the criteria for a mass shooting, because a mass shooting usually is done by a lone individual who is planning with malice of forethought to participate in these murders and also then participates in violence outside of those murders. All of these stunts are done to get attention. But in the case of this shooting near Portland, Maine, the mainstream media wanted to spin the story because I believe there were too many white people being associated with these mass shootings, because we've had over 150 or so, and it's not even May. I mean, we're only 4 months into the year, and we've had over 150 plus mass shootings, and many of the faces of the shooters are white and male. And in one case, we have a white female. And again, this whole correlation of whites and non-blacks with mass shootings, this is making many in the mainstream media uncomfortable, because it's making a white or a non-black person the face of violence, and they want to go out here and make black people the face of crime and violence. However, what's happening is the mass shootings are making it where it's impossible to create that narrative or reinforce it, because we're basically seeing white male and non-black male and female mass shooters coming up every day participating in this kind of violence. And because we're seeing white and non-blacks participating in this violence on the regular, it shatters the narrative that black people are the face of crime that has been presented in much of the mainstream media. And because this shatters the narrative of many of these in the mainstream media, they are now scrambling to try to reframe the narrative, and they wanted to go out here and take these crimes committed by these black people, these 5 black males at that dance hall in Alabama, and another incident where it was a gang-related shooting. They want to go out here and make this look like a mass shooting when it's not. Again, basically the media trying to gaslight you as related to these stories, and they want to gaslight you as related to these stories because they want to present their ideas as the narrative. Unfortunately, the facts are not fitting their narrative, and the facts don't fit their narrative. And again, it just was interesting to me how the mainstream media quickly stopped talking about the Alabama mass shooting in a national scope when they found out that the shooters were 5 black individuals. But in the case of this white mass shooter, they wanted to rewrite the story as related to the story to call it a shooting, when in actuality it fit all of the criteria of a mass shooting. And what was even more troubling is that this man was never supposed to have a gun, but he soon found a gun to participate in his crime. And then that also shatters the entire gun control debate once more. And that's another reason why they didn't want to cover this story, because it shattered the narrative of the whole gun control circular argument that many want to go into, because usually when there's one of these incidents, people love to go into the gun control debate, talking about how we need to get more gun laws. However, this ex-offender with a felony on his record for assault still managed, and was not supposed to have a firearm, still managed to find a firearm, shattering the narrative that, oh, we'll be able to stop them from getting guns if they have a record, when this individual went out here and found himself an illegal gun. Again, shattering their narratives and their circular arguments. This is what happens as related to these kinds of cases, and it happens with these kind of cases, and they really don't like it when this happens to come on, because when this comes on, again, it shatters their narrative and proves the point that we have a man crisis in this country. And with there being a man crisis in this country, we have to confront the fact that the problems that happen with these males that motivates them to participate in this violence has to do with them coming from dysfunctional families, and them coming from dysfunctional families where they are raised in a dysfunctional fashion. Because what happened here as related to this 34-year-old man was he did not know how to function in life as a man. He did not have male life skills. He did not have male survival skills. And once he came out of prison, he knew that he would have to be responsible for himself. So he's crying about a second chance instead of stepping up like a man but he couldn't step up like a man because he didn't know how to be a man. And because he did not know how to be a man, he went out here and looked to destroy the lives of those around him in order to deal with his frustration about being unable to deal with life. And then he went out here shooting at random cars, allegedly, and did this again to get attention. But that attention left him back in the same situation where he's going to go from being in the home that his parents were staying in, which is really troubling because his parents didn't even have their own home. They were staying with somebody else, to winding up back in the penitentiary where he will be traded for commissary by Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Michael. And these individuals will be trading him for Little Debbie snack cakes, ramen noodles, packets of Chipotle sauce, Kit Kat candy bars, off-brand chocolate Oreo cookies, off-brand lemon cookies, off-brand duplex cookies, marshmallow beeps, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pies, and Fritos chips. I mean, they're going to be turning this dude out for the rest of his life because he didn't understand the importance of freedom, and because he got in his feelings about the freedom that he had and being unable to cope with being responsible for himself. This is why he participated in this violence. But the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about what is motivating men like this to participate in this violence, because that points a finger right back at these women who were a part of the feminist movement, who wanted to redefine the family, but their attempts to redefine the family with the support of the Blue Party has created all of these dysfunctional males. And now that we're seeing basically a mass shooting 2 to 3 of them basically every day, the evidence is becoming so clear that it is not the guns that is the problem. The evidence is becoming clear that it is the family that has become the problem, and the family has fallen completely apart here in America, and no one wants to acknowledge the dysfunctional state of the American family. And even though the evidence is becoming clearer every day with the increase in frequency of violence that I talked about over 5 years ago when I wrote The Man Crisis and published it in 2018, we have many more Americans continuing to deny the problems here in America as related to the American family, because it is the family that's a mess. And again, the family is creating people who think that they need to kill people because they do not know how to go out here and function in life. And that's the reason why these people are killing people. And while you have many in government say it's the guns that are the problem, no, it's not the guns that are the problem, because I just listened about the passing of Dr. Charles Stanley, one of the greatest pastors of the 20th century, and that man had many firearms in his collection that he only used for hunting, and that man went through great hardship in his life. But because that man was raised with discipline and resolve, he never thought to once use those firearms to harm anyone. No, he went out to teach the gospel to 3 to 4 generations of people. And that's what happens when you are a man of character. When you are a man of character, you want to go out and do good, even though the world is doing you bad. And that's what the men in crisis don't understand. They don't understand that just because you have hard times in this world doesn't mean that you make life harder for others by hurting them. And that's something that the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about, because the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about the deteriorating state of the American family, because to talk about the deteriorating state of the American family means to hold America's women accountable for the way they have raised boys to become men, and realize that the way they raise boys to become men in their great society of the Blue Party has created a 21st century man crisis, and this 21st century man crisis has created 100 to 150 million landmines all across this country. And what we're seeing are these landmines exploding. And instead of people acknowledging the man crisis, what we have is the mainstream media pivoting and sticking its head in the sand, trying to make it look like it's a black problem when the black community was a canary in the coal mine back in the 1980s as these gangs and other criminal enterprises were forming. They were the canary in the coal mine, but now they want to try to conflate mass shootings with black people, when in actuality the country is getting worse, and it's getting worse because America refuses to acknowledge that our main problem with this kind of violence is the family, and it is the family and the destruction of the family by the feminist movement that has created the man crisis we deal with today, and individuals like this who go out and look to destroy the lives of others because they don't know how to function and have a life of their own. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to many of these males winding up participating in this kind of violence, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more men's issues videos, you can send a donation to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available for free on Google Play and Smashwords. The Retreat by Lawrence Cherry. If you want to advance in your faith in God, sometimes you have to retreat. Get The Retreat for free on Smashwords and Google Play today.